First of all, it's great to be back in Latvia. I visited Latvia in December last year, and I'm looking forward to meet with the EU defense ministers. I think the fact that the Secretary General of NATO meet with the defense ministers of the European Union just underlines the close cooperation and relationship that exists between the European Union and NATO. And I very much appreciate this opportunity to meet with the ministers, because the meeting takes place at a critical time for European security. Because as we speak, as we meet here in Riga, we see a very difficult situation and a deteriorating situation in eastern Ukraine. We have seen that the ceasefire has not been respected. We have seen the separatists in eastern Ukraine making advances, especially in and around the Balcheve, and they have used advanced weapons to attack the Ukrainian forces in the Balcheve. Russia provides support for the separatists, with providing them with heavy equipment, advanced weapons, forces and training. And the ceasefire is also undermined by the fact that the OSCE monitors are not allowed access to be able to do their job to monitor the ceasefire. And I urge Russia to withdraw all its forces from eastern Ukraine, to stop all its support for the separatists, and to respect the Minsk agreement, and to also use all its influence on the separatists to make them respect the ceasefire. I support the decision by the UN Security Council, which call on all the parties to respect the Minsk agreement and to respect and implement the ceasefire. And the Minsk agreement and the ceasefire remains the most important tool we have to achieve a negotiated, peaceful solution to the conflict in Ukraine. And therefore, I urge all parties to implement the Minsk agreement in full and to respect the ceasefire. Thank you.